Alright, today is the first day of the North Dakota season. I'm here with Shane Simpson from Calling All Turkeys. We got here yesterday afternoon, did some driving around, looked at some public land, tried to see what kind of deer action we could see in the fields, what was growing in the fields. Seemed like there wasn't really all that much for alfalfa or soybeans or even corn. A whole lot of wheat or other cereal grains it looked like. Not a ton of deer in the fields. So we're going to go drive around some more places this morning, and we always have as a fallback a bunch of public land with some CRP that we didn't see any deer in, but there's probably also oak trees. So the thought process is that there's not really that much for attractive, food sources out in the fields around some of those lands. There's enough woods to hold a lot of deer. They might be hitting the acorns by this time. So we'll drive around this morning, and then around noon when the season actually starts, we'll head into some of these woodlots and start doing some boots on the ground and then just kind of scout our way in. The one exception was that we found one little tiny 15-acre piece of ground that had some green field on it, and right as we came up around the corner there was a pretty nice velvet buck standing there in the middle of the road and a doe in the field. And so we got some footage of the doe, but the buck got out of there a little bit too quick. So Shane might make a play on that place tonight if we don't find anything that looks better. There's a bur oak right there. A whole bunch of them.
There's some deer tracks.
Deer tracks?
Yeah, just some small ones.
Yeah, well, it's a start. Just based on that topography, if there's oaks back there and there's that big CRP field, and it's pretty secluded, but not too many people get back there.
I imagine that's probably a good spot.
That could be pretty good.
I mean, you're going to see some deer, I would imagine, at least.
Yeah.
You may not see what you want to shoot, but you're going to see some deer.
Milkweed pit stop. That should be a good supply for a while. I already got some. Alright, so we're driving around just checking out these little pieces of public land, some of which are state land, some of which are plots, which is private, open to public hunting. And this one that we just drove past, it's essentially a little thin strip of land, and then once you get back maybe half a mile, it opens up into about 150 acres of what could be pretty good cropland that has basically a nice ridge line right on the edge of it, dropping down into a big river bottom that you can see trails and stuff on the map. And there's alfalfa on the back side of us here, and so there's not a ton of alfalfa around here. A lot of it's just kind of wheat. I'd say mostly wheat and canola for the most part, from what we can tell. So it could be a pretty good spot. And this is the second good spot that we've seen on the plots side of things. And what we can tell too, just by the road here, is that there's a big line of bur oaks that entire way down that access path, and so it stands to reason that there's going to be more. There's bur oaks in the last place that we looked at that were all loaded with acorns. So this is definitely one of those spots that we're going to keep on the list for sure. Alright, first sit of the 2019 season, and as you can see around me, there is a lot of crops. This looks like a picked wheat field. And I basically parked and walked. This is one of those private lands that are open to public access. And then on the other side of this tree row, there's soybeans, and that's posted. Can't go on it. As we get closer down to this wood line, you can see behind me, there's a couple big drainages that come up, and this land also backs up and swoops behind that soybeans. So the plan is to get back behind this soybean field and look at some of the drainages as they kind of come up towards it, and just get a feel for which trees are dropping acorns, and try and pick a spot like that where I'm going to see some of that natural movement where these deer might get out of their beds, start feeding on acorns, maybe en route to hitting the soybean field after dark. And I'm seeing tracks along the edge of this picked wheat field. It's hard to tell exactly how new they are because of how dry everything is. There's a bur oak right here that's dropping. It looks like the dirt is kicked up a little bit, so definitely another clue that they're probably feeding on those acorns right now, and that's going to be key in terms of how I set up. As this field tapers around, we got that outside corner of the field, inside corner of the woods. Could potentially be a good pinch point. Looks like there may even be some oaks right there, and a little mini kind of ravine maybe leading up to the field in that low spot. So I'll try to work my way that direction. after I got to that field edge with that CRP and the oaks, which kind of looked good, but there wasn't a ton of fresh deer sign, I decided to loop up behind into the woodlot behind this soybean field. Some deer sign, nothing really crazy, nothing really fresh, and the stem count back here is pretty high. If some of these bigger bucks are still in velvet, they may want to try and avoid that a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to that first spot, figure out a way to set up and hunt that, and if anything else, I'll have some visibility over that CRP. Alright, I've covered quite a bit of ground by this point, and there's some tracks. I've gone field edge, I've gone just into the CRP, checked out some oaks, and there's nothing that's like screaming super fresh. There's also nothing that's screaming super heavy sign. You know, like I said, it's just kind of a track here and there, and it's basically like, you know, it was made sometime since the last rainfall. That's about the only as fresh as it looks. So I'm just continuing to cover ground. Got several hundred acres here of, you know, field and connecting woods and little fingers that jut out into the field. So I'll just keep covering ground until something looks good. So by the time it was all said and done, I ended up going about 2 miles, just kind of scouting my way through, looking for something good. And tracks here and there, nothing heavy, nothing screaming super fresh. So I just kept moving. Eventually got to a spot where it seems about as good as anything I found. And there's some bur oaks, which I'm sure you can tell I'm sitting in a cluster of them. But more so, I have pretty decent visibility in several directions from this spot. It's a little kind of finger ravine that heads up into a picked wheat field. And the thought is, there's a chance deer could filter up through here, but also there's a chance I can glass in various directions to see maybe if this area is worth another sit, or if tomorrow we'll just head to a new area. Down to about the last half hour of light right now. Haven't glassed anything in the surrounding fields. Nothing moving nearby. I feel like I had to give this area a good sit. And now, assuming I don't see anything for the rest of the night, I'll be able to cross this one off entirely and start focusing on some of the other ones that we found. The nice thing is that the wind direction tomorrow and the day after, it's more suitable for a couple of the other spots that we drove by and scouted that really look, you know, pretty decent. So got my fingers crossed for the next couple of days.